I will fight for you, unless you have any marketable plushies of me.
About that.
It's insane that my first Pokemon game, Pokemon Leaf Green, is turning 20 years old this year. This game not only played a part in shaping my love for Pokemon, but it also in a way influenced my love of video games as a whole, and I owe it many thanks. But a few years back, my brother brought up a potential idea that I could do for another playthrough, and possibly a potential video. A Nuzlocke run of any Pokemon game. Now, for those unaware, a Nuzlocke is a playthrough of a game where the player deliberately makes choices not forced onto them to challenge themselves more beyond what the game offers, that always has two rules in particular. One, if a Pokemon faints at any point, they can no longer be used for the entire run. It basically works like permadeath, if any of you know about that. Two, the player is only allowed to catch the first Pokemon they see on each new route. In other words, the Pokemon I have to catch can't just be what I want unless the game picks it out for me, which isn't a guarantee. I personally was nervous about doing this, considering I like to make my own adventures when playing a Pokemon game, but I figured that since I'm so familiar with this game, and it's turning 20, it's worth trying it out now. Now, my personal Nuzlocke rules are going to give me a little bit more freedom, but in my opinion, are just balanced enough to not make this feel like I'm just playing through the game normally. Number 1, the starter I'm picking will be dictated by the last number of my trainer ID rather than my own choice. If it's 1, 2, or 3, I'm picking Bulbasaur. If it's 4, 5, or 6, I'm picking Charmander. If it's 7, 8, or 9, I'm picking Squirtle. Like I usually do when we're playing the game, but a 0 will result in a number roll between 1, 2, and 3, which will decide my starter. Number 2, I'm only using Pokemon I can catch and can get from in-game trades. Multiplayer trades are not allowed, meaning that sadly eliminates the likes of Machamp, Gengar, and Alakazam from joining the ranks. Number 3, no reloading to save a team member. Number 4, I'm going to bend the catch the first Pokemon I see on a route rule and say that I'm allowed to mulligan if I actually beat the Pokemon with an unintentional critical hit, if it uses a move where it leaves the battle or self-destructs, or I run out of Pokeballs. To make up for this, I won't mulligan if I beat the target with no critical, or if I flee accidentally or intentionally. I think this is a good balance. Though during my playthrough, I decided to add another mulligan to this, in that I can re-roll if my first encounter is one I already have. I got to Lieutenant Search without realizing I can do that, let alone the rule has a name, the no dupes clause, so after that, it'll be in effect. I really like to pretend I'm smart sometimes. Number 5, I only lose a run if all the Pokemon that I have caught are KO'd, meaning if I lose a battle but still have some Pokemon left on my PC, I can keep going. Number 6, battles will be set to the set option, meaning I don't get a choice to switch when my opponent sends in another Pokemon. I never play Pokemon games with this setting, but I feel like I need to for this scenario. Number 7, I'm allowed to use my unlimited rare candies under 2 circumstances. The first being to make the gap between my lowest level Pokemon and my highest level at most equal to 5, so that everyone is on the same page. The second being that if I'm at the entrance of a gym, every Pokemon is allowed to be equal to the level of the gym leader's lowest leveled Pokemon. Here are those levels for those who are wondering. This rule is only in place to save time and make sure I'm prepared for what's ahead. I don't really feel like grinding to the middle levels of leader's team like I normally do, and let the playthrough last longer than it really should. And I could just get everyone to level 100 and just bulldoze everything, but I'm not going to. That's not content. Instead, like I said, I will stick to these levels and not use any other cheats. Except for one at a certain point, but we're not going to read the last page first. Number 8, I can only use 3 healing items per battle. Anything from a potion to an antidote to a full heal qualifies. Though I'm not using Revives because this is a Nuzlocke. I feel this gives me a bit of leeway, but at the same time, encourages me to be smart with what I use and when I use it. Besides, bosses use items, so I think I can as well. While on that, I can give my Pokemon held items. Don't think that needs to be its own rule, but I just want to make that clear. And number 9 is a sort of combination of rules banning multiple things that can be done in playthroughs, so no legendaries, no daycare, and no EXP share. I'm definitely going to be approaching this game much differently than I've ever done before, but hey, sometimes it helps just try something different. So, let's see how it went. First things first, after scrolling through some intro dialogue and naming my player character Bob and my rival Larry, I hope you know what I am referencing, it's time to see what my trainer ID gives me. Well, it looks like I'm going with Bulbasaur for this one. Normally I don't use Bulbasaur in Kanto playthroughs as I find Charmander and especially Squirtle more fun and handy across the board, and in this game, Razor Leaf is honestly the most practical grass type move it can learn, as any others have massive caveats like too low of PP or turn vulnerability, or are inaccessible in the main story without trading, and Sludge Bomb is not available during the main story either. But considering it has a type advantage against the first two gyms, a resistance to the third, and the ability to not be poisoned, it probably has the easiest time with the early game compared to the others. Though the biggest things that would stand in its way early on are any flying types, and the rival having Charmander. I was able to beat him just fine in the first encounter in Oak's lab, where it's a contest of who can tackle or scratch who the hardest, so I can work with Bulbasaur. I was able to get Leech Seed on my trip to get Oak's parcel, and my first catch on Route 1 was a level 3 Rattata, which I immediately lost in Route 22 when I tried to get a Spearow. Yeah, since it's got Peck, I decided to intentionally flee and call my encounter on this route a wash, because Bulbasaur is weak to it, and I'd rather wash an encounter on a route than outright lose a run when I literally stepped outside. However, my next encounter was another Rattata. I'm glad I decided to add that change later. I knew I would more than likely not get a Pikachu when I got to Viridian Forest, and I was correct on that assumption, but since I had no Spearows, I largely had Bulbasaur do a lot of the work, while sometimes using my rare candies to ensure the other two were at most 5 levels behind. But both Rattata and Weedle did occasionally chime in, the latter even evolved into Kakuna, and it didn't get to spend much time as one, as allowing every team member to be the same level as the gym leader's lowest leveled Pokemon meant that it immediately got to become a Beedrill. Not like it mattered anyways, Bulbasaur just cleaved through. The Onix even outsped, and decided to use Tackle and not Rock Tomb. Routes 3 and 4 in Mount Moon were really nothing to write home about. I skipped a youngster that has a Spearow because I don't want to be backed into a corner, my Bulbasaur evolved, I chose to get the Helix fossil after driving Team Rocket away, and I wound up catching a Pidgey and a Zubat. The Zubat I don't think will be very helpful. It doesn't get Wing Attack until level 21, one level away from evolution, and Golbat cannot evolve into Crobat during the main story, so that's lame. Other than that, for getting to with the no dupes clause led to me catching a third Rattata. I mean, both have Hyper Fang by this point, which has been very helpful, but still, kinda rough, especially when we have another fight with Larry coming up. I went into this fight genuinely concerned, especially since you've got a Pidgeotto way earlier than he was supposed to. I really didn't have anything that could make this team semi-comfortable to deal with, so my idea was just to let Rattata 3 do its best, and the rest can clean up. But that Rattata actually did a lot more than I was expecting, outspeeding it, getting a Tail Whip to help, and taking 2 gusts just fine. I'd probably still have it, if I took Quick Attack into account. RIP. Thankfully, Rattata 2 was able to take it out just fine, as well as dealing with his Rattata with a crit, and in comes his Charmander. This one I'm also concerned about, considering Ivysaur and Beedrill are weak to its Ember, but I do hope Rattata can get some work done. Too bad the Hyper Fang misses, and Ember does more than half its health. So at this point, I try to get Zubat to Supersonic it, but it doesn't outspeed, and it falls. Here comes the part of the fight that I'm really not proud of. My Pidgey, who has been doing pretty well at this point, and is close to evolving, comes out next. Charmander outspeeds and takes a good chunk off it. Gust and Quick Attack deals good damage, but the order I used them in activated Blaze, and that did Pidgey in. You have earned your rights to make fun of me. I mean, I won the battle at the end, as the Abra could not do anything, but man, I did not deserve to come out of that battle unscathed. At this point, I'm essentially back to where I was when I beat Brock, with a few more levels. This is why I'm playing a lot of these battles a little more defensively, trying to make sure I can safely switch in on what's coming, and making sure every Pokemon remains with the most amount of health possible. Sadly, with another Beedrill, that's harder to do. But I did find a Bellsprout to use as a backup grass type, especially with it getting the status powders almost immediately. I did fight most of the trainers around 24 and 25, and one trainer in the Cerulean Gym, so I felt pretty good for the fight with Misty. Now, I didn't necessarily want this to go down the exact same as my fight with Brock, with Ivysaur sweeping, so I decided to use Bellsprout to start off. Well, that, and I did want to preserve Ivysaur's health for when Starmie comes out, as while Water Pulse and Swift aren't the most destructive moves, they'll definitely hurt coming out of a Pokemon with 100 special attack at this point. Bellsprout did hold its own pretty well, taking out the Staryu and paralyzing Starmie. The latter did a lot of damage normally, but it was unfortunate when I healed Bellsprout with a Super Potion, only for it to score a critical hit with Swift, and then healed Bellsprout with another Super Potion, only for Starmie to crit again with Water Pulse that does Bellsprout in. Clearly I anger some kind of cosmic deity. Though this wasn't anything Ivysaur couldn't pick back up. Things didn't look too great with the Rocket Grunt with the Dig TM either. He has a Machop with Focus Energy and Karate Chop, and worst of all, a Drowsy that's got Confusion, which 3-5-4 Pokemon are weak to. I tried Rattata, but it missed with Hyper Fang and didn't take Confusion pretty well, but Beedrill handled it with a few Hyper Potions and a turn of Sleep, without Twin Needle. I was feeling a little nervous about how this playthrough was going, as my team is not optimal at all, and RNG has really not been the kindest in the moments where I'd like. Not to mention I've let my own fear get the better of me. But I decided to press on, as I might get some good team members soon, and hopefully, things will look up. And my next team member is another Bellsprout. Or it would have been if I didn't crit it, so I'll take the Meowth instead. I tried using this strategy on Route 6 as I got another Meowth, but I didn't score a crit on it, so this route's a wash. But thankfully, I was able to find a very competently leveled Spearow on Route 11, and a very helpful member in Diglett's Cave. Diglett could be a double-edged sword in a Nuzlocke, given its frailty, yet its good power, but given it as a type advantage against so many Pokemon aboard the SSN, and some of the lower Pokemon aboard there do not have super effective moves against it, like Goldeen and, thankfully, Tentacool, Diglett did a great job getting prepared for the gym aboard here. The only cost was Meowth losing to Larry's Charmeleon in an effort to preserve HP. If I lost Diglett here, I would probably be in big trouble, though this Meowth will always be thanked for having Pickup, which got me some decent items. Trying to work with Lieutenant Surge's gym had some tense moments, as Diglett took quite a bit for the quick attacks from the trainers' Pikachus and Lieutenant Surge's Raichu, but took care of most of the gym on its own. The only exception is Surge's Raichu, as its double team caused the second magnitude to miss, and a quick attack from it dealt over half its health, so Ivysaur came in and cleaned up just fine with Secret Power. I should also mention I've largely been preserving my TMs as of this point, because since they're single use, and there's basically permadeath rules on, I do not want to use one on a Pokemon that I am not confident in. Like, if I lost one that did have a TM used on it, well, there it goes, and you can't get another copy of most TMs in this game, but I'm still remaining sure I'll find at least some use for them in the future. And because the No Dupes clause went into effect here, this means that I get to have Sandshrew as my Route 9 encounter, and Vulpix as my Route 8 encounter. I thought Vulpix would be decent for endgame, since I lack many Fire-type options. I also chose to use my Route 10 encounter on Voltorb, despite being able to use it for fishing, because I need something that can use Flash, and a decent electric type with help for those flying types I've been seeing. Speaking of Flash, getting it was probably one of the biggest risks I had so far. See, to get the HM for it, you have to go completely through Diglett's Cave back to Route 2, and then go back through it to where you were. This was tense because in Diglett's Cave, there's a 5% chance of finding a wild Dugtrio, which are a lot higher level than what you've been using. It's bad enough that I can't repel them, since repels don't scare away Pokemon higher level than you, but Dugtrio not only has really solid sweeping stats, especially at this point, and the high speed means I likely won't escape from it naturally, even with the likes of Fearow, but Dugtrio can also have Arena Trap, which prevents me from escaping unless I'm using a Pokemon with Runaway, which I do not have, or Smoke Ball for its held item, which is not obtainable at this point in the game, so I better be ready for the worst. Thankfully I didn't encounter any on the way there, but I ran into 2 on the way back. I did everything in my power to make sure they didn't overwhelm Ivysaur, and even though I beat both of them and got a level out of it, I was scared they were going to wipe me out. Keeping every member of the team up means my Sandshrew immediately evolved, and got no useful moves out of it. But Voltorb did get Spark, which is really nice. After arriving in Lavender Town, this is where the game starts to give you a little more freedom of choice. With Celadon housing the next recommended gym, the Rocket Hideout, and the necessary drinks needed to access Saffron City, you can do some things in whatever order you want. As for me, I decided to head west and do as much as I wanted in Celadon City at the moment, before doing anything in the Pokemon Tower, on top of deciding I wanted to start saving some money so I can buy coins for TMs I know I'll need. The Celadon Gate Corner has TMs for Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Ice Beam, and Shadow Ball, which will be essential later on. Flamethrower a little less so, since Vulpix eventually gets that leveling up. Though the Celadon department store does have a Firestone need for Vulpix to evolve, I decided to delay that until the point where it learns Flamethrower. Same goes for the Eevee I stole from the Celadon Mansion until level 30 where it learns Bite, which is considered special in this gen, because I plan to evolve it into Jolteon. So deciding that there's no time to waste, it's time for Erica's gym. Grass types aren't the most threatening to my team overall, but status ailments will definitely be a problem here. I used Vulpix for the first half of trainers, and it struggled a lot dealing with the status ailments, especially poison and paralysis, since its Ember could not one-shot even the Bellsprouts or the Oddishes. Though in the battle with Cool Trainer Mary, her first 3 Pokemon kept on missing with these moves, and the Gloom did not have a single attacking move, which was pretty funny. From that point, I used Fearow to speed up getting money, and to make sure it was in prime condition to take on Erica. So Erica, I literally planned on using Fearow just to make my way through, but her having 2 fully evolved higher leveled grass types, both of which have status inflicting moves, means that I decided to bring back my first speed drill as a tank in order to give Fearow some room should it need it. And sure enough, its Fly, which I got from Route 16 westward, does not kill the Victreebel in a single hit, and the Stun Spore connects, paralyzing it. Fearow was able to fight through the paralysis to peck it after Erica healed, but Victreebel nailed a pretty bad acid while Fearow was stuck. So I decided to bring out Beedrill to let Fearow recuperate, using a paralyzed heal when Tangela came out. Beedrill sadly followed the same fate of getting paralyzed after it got up a focus energy, but a double twin needle is able to take out the victory bell. Tangela I wasn't overly concerned about given it's lower leveled, but it's naturally a pretty decent tank, so I thought about leaving Beedrill in to see what happens. And what happened was that Tangela got 2 crits in a row with Constrict and Giga Drain. This didn't kill, thankfully, but I took it as a sign to bring Firo back in to finish up. Because the Poison Sting poisoned Tangela, Erica wastes her full heal, which means I get a free switch. That's what I like to see. Vileplume I wasn't super confident in my ability to take out in a single hit, and even with the likes of Acid, it would really hurt. So I decided to heal Firo while sacrificing Beedrill. While I can't say I fully enjoyed using Beedrill, honestly, having one here made it worth keeping around. And with Firo back in the fray, I was unfortunately right in my assumption that a single fly could not one-hit kill the Vileplume. So it uses Stun Spore, and misses! That was a cathartic way to end a really tense match. Missing with the biggest threat to my team and getting done in by Peck? I am so proud of you, Firo! In the early stages of the Rocket Hideout, I used some of my money to get 1,000 coins so I could get full picks to Charcoal to make up for what she missed in Erica's gym, and her Ember proved to be very effective in most battles she took part in, but she got what I wanted before evolving. Whatever fight she's in from here on out, Flamethrower is going to be her go-to move. There really isn't much to talk about in the Rocket Hideout, aside from Eevee flexing with Secret Power by paralyzing his opponents and preventing them from moving 2 separate times. The Coughing in particular was immobilized for 2 turns, which I gotta laugh at. And that brings us to Giovanni. His Onyx and Rhyhorn, I was not worried about, as Ivysaur did them in like she does any other rock ground type. But this Kangaskhan is what I was really worried about. Kangaskhan having amazing bulk for this point in the game, on top of great attack and speed, is a start, but this one having Fake Out, meaning it opens with free damage from one of your Pokemon, Tail Whip lowering defense making its high stats more threatening, Mega Punch that will hit like a truck on most Pokemon at this point, Bite for coverage against Ghost types, Early Bird rendering Sleep strats useless, and to top it all off, I don't have anything that can deal super effective damage against it. So yeah, there is a lot that could go wrong when fighting this thing. I tried Secret Powering it with Ivysaur to start and hopefully paralyze it, but that ends up barely scratching it. So out of fear that it'll Mega Punch going off lower defense, I switch into Ninetales and it Tail Whips again. I didn't want to bank on burning it with Will-O-Wisp because moves that have 70 to 75 accuracy range tend to miss a lot, and I've had plenty of times where moves with imperfect accuracy missed, so I went for broke and used Flamethrower, which did do a lot of damage, but so did that thing's Mega Punch. Figuring it'd do that again, and being impressed with Flamethrower's damage output, I used it again, only to get screwed by damage range. Okay, Giovanni, you've lived with single-digit HP. You have the opportunity for a big team Idiot! Idiot! Thinking back, I could have probably just told my Graveler Break for this thing, but I guess doing stupid stuff for content is part of the fun of these. And with the Silph Scope, it's off to the Pokemon Tower and another rival rematch. It is a shame that Voltorb couldn't take out Larry's Pidgeotto or Gyarados in a single spark each, and working around his Execute could have gone better, but him giving Ninetales a power boost via Flash Fire was so worth it. I caught a Ghastly here, and because of my rules, I immediately evolved into Haunter, and I got some nice experience going against all the other Ghastlies and Haunters in here. The Ghost Marowak could have easily gone wrong, as Marowak has solid stats for this point, and Leer and Focus Energy make its Headbutt and Boomerang really dangerous, but Ivysaur took care of it before it could do any significant damage. It's part into the afterlife, Mr. Fuji is saved, the Pokeflute is ours, and I decided to make Snorlax my Route 16 encounter. I brought my Graveler along for this one because there's not much Snorlax can do to actually hurt it. She has Brick for the sake of having a super effective move to hit it with, because Snorlax is really bulky, and these wild ones have Rest by default with a Chesto Berry, so it's going to take some effort to bring one down. Haunter's also coming along to give Graveler a moment of reprieve if she needs it, since Snorlax can't do anything to her. This may not be the best Graveler in the world, but I'm super confident she can help my efforts to catch the Snorlax. This was a slow battle, because even with a super effective Brick Break, Graveler was only taking out parts of its health that it could get back with rest. The first headbutt it got was a critical hit, and worst of all, the first attempt ended in a mulligan, since it broke out of all the Pokeballs and Great Balls that I had. I got this mulligan by resetting. Never said I couldn't use resets in this scenario. Though, to balance this out, I KO'd the Snorlax on Route 12, and considered my Vermilion City fishing encounter a wash, since the Gyarados KO'd itself in confusion, which my rules said nothing about. The second attempt eventually ended in its capture, as it never used rest while in red health. Afterwards, I gave it Brick Break for coverage, since I could buy that for the Celadon department store, and out of curiosity, I checked its IVs. And they're really good. Its HP1 could be better, but it could be worse. It's pretending that special attack and speed don't exist, which I'm cool with. Its attack is great, and it's got near perfect IVs in defense and special defense. Its nature also boosts the special defense, and thick fat will be very helpful in many places. We are going to take so much together. While on catching more, after Ivysaur evolved into Venusaur after beating a not very intimidating fisherman, I went and got the Heavenly Super Rod. With this, a slew of new encounters just opened up. With the old rod, I could have caught a Magikarp in some places, but since it misses out on Thrash upon evolving, I decided to wait until later before I used my first encounters on fishing. And this Krabby put up a good fight for my first one. I could go for Kingler long term, but given the water type is special in this gen, yeah. Then there was the Gyarados of Vermilion City, and then I got the Super Rod encounter that I wanted. A Staryu. Given Starmie has amazing coverage, and I can get the Water Stone I need to evolve it right there, and get Thunderbolt and Ice Beam and Celadon too, I do want to save it for endgame. I could wait on evolving it until level 46 to get Hydro Pump, but I don't really trust that 80% accuracy, and I feel more content with Surf, and that move is very close by. Bubble Beam makes a pretty good temporary move until then, so I stuck it out until level 28 before evolving. While on that, I got started with coin stockpiling for either Thunderbolt or Ice Beam, unlocked Saffron City, and got an essential TM for Starmie, Psychic. With this, most poison and fighting types will be non-issues, and it has offensive moves to use with both of its types. Because I registered 30 Pokemon by this point, I went and got the item finder and used it to find the leftovers for Snorlax. Its Tangy prowess went up tenfold. But for every cool thing that happened on my way to Fuchsia City, it sadly came at a cost. I got a Wild Pidgeotto on Route 13 that my Eevee wiped to because it got a critical hit with Wing Attack that dealt more than 4/5 of Eevee's health. And with the Whirlwinding to preemptively end the encounter, you have no idea how much restraint it took me to not have my Mulligan involved resetting the game to revive Eevee. But the next Pidgeotto I see, I'm going to make sure it sees no mercy. Oh, you will do!
Now that's what I call Mongolian barbecue.
After some more trainer battles and boring encounters, we come to Fuchsia City. I just got the Safari Zone business done, that led to me getting the Surf and Strength HMs, which went to Starmie and Venusaur respectively. At this point, I decided to fight all the trainers on the routes next to Fuchsia City for some extra experience and money, which led to me getting enough coins to
Give it a thunderbolt.
After that, I decided to slightly bend my rare candy rule, and used them to get everyone to level 35 when I got to the doorstep of Sylph Company. Things will basically just become a string of battles for now, with this, Saffron's Fighting Dojo, and the next two gyms. A select number of trainers within these facilities will start to get into the low level 40s, so we'll be battling a lot. Nevertheless, it's time to drive Team Rocket out of this place. Every team member got to fight in some battles, and gained at least one level here, but I always gritted my teeth when I fought a member of the Voltorb or Coughing line, because they can know self-destruct by this point, and that's very scary. My Dugtrio was 7 levels above this Voltorb, and a self-destruct from it dealt over half health. Yeah, I'm not taking my chances here. Other than that, the beds were handy, and then comes the first reason why I got to level 35, Larry. Things don't look too hot when a Thunderbolt doesn't immediately take out its Pidgeot, but it didn't do that much with Wing Attack and went down, with Gyarados following suit. In terms of damage output, his Execute isn't that big of a threat, but the problem is the set mode means I likely will have to deal with a team member that's either paralyzed or has their health constantly draining. And I'd rather not push my luck with Confusion either, so I decided to send out Snorlax expecting a Stun Spore, and it lands, paralyzing it. And honestly, I do not care, because Snorlax is already slower than Erosion, so even if it gets immobilized, Larry can't do much to it. Thankfully, it never stood still when action mattered most, and it was able to take out Execute, Alakazam, and Charizard with relative ease. Charizard I did have to play around a little bit, because the Body Slam did less than half its health, and he's got Blaze. I'm not making the same mistake again. And that just leaves Giovanni, and his Kangaskhan, the lowest level Pokemon he has, was the most threatening one to deal with. Snorlax got into a slugfest with this thing, as 2 Brick Breaks were not enough to take it down, and it fell into red health from a rage-powered Mega Punch. I thought it critted for a bit, but I am glad it didn't. But I'm happy everything turned out okay, as the rest of his team was a piece of cake to take on. I didn't struggle with the Fighting Dojo, as I largely used Fearow and Venusaur to get some work done on the lower level Black Belts, before Starmie took care of the level 36 Primeape, and the Dojo Master using both Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. I chose Hitmonlee afterwards because Hitmonchan is very sad that the elemental punches are counted as special moves in this game. This then brings us to the Master Koga before Master Koga. I was sort of expecting to go in expecting a Starmie sweep, since it has Psychic, and Psychic types are ideal for this fight, but the member I was concerned with the most was his Muck. A single sludge isn't that devastating, but I'm worried about it surviving at least one psychic as it is bulky, and afterwards, being able to badly poison me, raise its own defense sky high, or worst of all, raise its own evasiveness, making it harder for every Pokemon to hit it. Thankfully, that did not happen, and it went down after a little scuffle. The 2 Coughings and the Wheezing also submitted. I'm thankful the Coughings did, because they can also blow up, and I'd rather they not. Since I had a lot of money by this point, I decided to grade up some more of it by fighting these 2 beauties East of Fuchsia to get Snorlax's Shadow Ball, giving him excellent coverage for Pokemon we'll be fighting for the rest of the adventure, including Sabrina's team. Sabrina doesn't pose that big of a threat to Snorlax, and I'm certain no one will be able to stack Calm Minds up, but the 2 things I was watching out for were the Kadabra's Reflect and the Venomoth's Supersonic. The former could easily reduce Snorlax's damage output, prolonging the battle, and might make things easier for her Alakazam, while the latter does have me worried about hitting myself and giving her too many free turns. Really, the biggest thing that could hurt me is myself. Kadabra and Mr. Mime tried to set up Calm Minds all for nothing, but the Venomoth is actually able to nail a Supersonic when it comes out and withstand a Body Slam. On the bright side, it does pitiful damage to Snorlax, and Sabrina wastes both her Hyper Potions on it. Sadly, it does hit another Supersonic when Snorlax snaps out, but Snorlax is able to power through and turn it into a Moth Pancake, leading to Alakazam coming out last. Right then and there, I basically thought to myself, Snorlax, this would be a bad time to hurt yourself, power through, and take it out. And Snorlax immediately gets over its confusion and banishes her Alakazam to the Shadow Realm. That was awesome! Snorlax, we haven't been together for that long, but you are absolutely worthy of being referred to as one of the team champs. Now that we have access to Surf, we're able to head to Cinnabar Island. I decided to skip over the Seafoam Islands after catching a Slowpoke because I had no repels and was getting swarmed with encounters. There really wasn't much I was missing there anyways. So after getting to Cinnabar Island, our trek through the Pokemon Mansion went well, except for the part where the Scientist Wheezing got 2 crit and poison combos in a row. And while my Starmie was more than enough to take on Blaine, I decided to build up some water types I caught as backups and something to break up Starmie's conquest. Those in question being my newly evolved Slowbro and Amistar. But as I said, Starmie was all I needed as all of his Pokemon just dropped immediately, including his level 47 Arcanine, who he sent out second. He tried going for the throat, but it didn't work in the end. Now it's off to the first 3 Sevii Islands, which, by the way, are a really neat addition to the game. After I reorganized my team for my PC After I drove off the Spiker Gang on 3 Island, got my team back, and saved Lustel from a Hypno, I decided just go on ahead and take down Giovanni at the Viridian Gym. This was another Starmie sweep because Giovanni's team is not optimized to handle a lot of water threats, despite them doing decent damage with Earthquake. Too bad they didn't get the chance to use it because his Dugtrio could not outspeed Starmie, and his Neoqueen could not withstand a Surf from it. Wow, both surprised and unsurprised that this encounter was way easier than the other 2. Also, Team Rocket is finished? Sure man, whatever you say. Before I set off for the Pokemon League, I decided to go to the Sevii Islands and the Power Plant, catch any Pokemon I still had yet to catch, while ignoring Moltres and Zapdos, and combine some training and a smidge of rule bending to get my team to level 47 before another tango with Larry. I did some messing around to get ideal switch-ins when the time was right. His Execute has 3 Powders and Solar Beam, so I wanted to bait one out while avoiding status ailments, except on Snorlax because he doesn't really care, and his Gyarados' most damaging move is Hydro Pump, which Starmie can easily take. I got jump scared by the Rhyhorn critting Dugtrio, but I'm glad he pulled through. But I picked level 47 because all of a sudden, level 53 starter. Talk about level whiplash. It doesn't help that this Charizard's moveset is pretty dangerous compared to the other starters. Starmie was not able to take it out with a single Surf, and I was certain Charizard could outspeed because of Scary Face and the level gap, so I tried to bait him into using a Blaze boosted Flamethrower by sending out Ninetales, and it worked. History repeats itself. It still outsped me, but that didn't matter as the returning Flashfire boosted Flamethrower takes it out. The Alakazam also used Disable to no avail on Snorlax, and Shadow Ball ended the fight. I was legit worried about how this encounter would go, but I am glad everything worked out. Aside from almost losing Dugtrio and getting jump scared by Starmie taking a Mega Horn from a Nidoking, Victory Road was pretty comfy. And so, we've arrived at the Indigo Plateau. Now before I headed in, I decided to do a rare candy top off to get everyone up to level 58, which is the same level as Agatha's strongest Pokemon, but is also under most of Larry's team. I think this is a good middle ground for it, that should still give me a good challenge, but not an overbearing one. Also, you know how I said I won't use any other cheats except one at a certain point? This is that point. I feel like if I use this cheat at any other point, I would probably be cheapening the run by having no limitations on what I could buy. But because we're at the end of the game, where we have to fight a string of boss trainers, with our items being the only form of a break we have, I feel this cheat is absolutely justified now. I tried searching for useful held items for my Pokemon, but a search for a Sharpbeak, which is held by wild Fearos 5% of the time, took way too long, and I just gave up on it. Other options I was interested in were locked behind similar methods. So for my final team, I chose to have Starmie because it alone destroys over 50% of this Elite Four, and after it has been my champ ever since my first trek to Fuchsia, it deserves to come along. Snorlax because it has also been a champ, taking hits I don't want any others to take, and making Sabrina a piece of cake. Dugtrio because while it is frail, it can be a useful Pokemon to get some quick damage in. Fearow because it has come out with some impressive wins, especially with its handy Drill Peck. Ninetales to have a handy Fire type, and it's a good match against some Pokemon we'll be fighting. And finally, Venusaur, as a way of saying thank you for sticking with me until the end, and for being my alpha at the very start. I probably could have found an easy way to make some others I caught work, like Haunter, Magneton, and Aerodactyl, but I'm the type of guy who likes to bond with Pokemon throughout the whole journey, and I think this is more than enough to claim the title of Champion of Kanto. So after stocking up, I looked over all the Pokemon that I had caught, and told myself that even if I completely wipe here, I'm absolutely proud of how this run has gone. I've had plenty of ups and downs throughout, but if I came this far, I know I'll find some way to pull through. Now, once and for all, Lorelei's up first, and while Starmie and Snorlax are definitely the most helpful against this team, what order I have them out will definitely cause the fight to play out differently. Snorlax will absolutely not take out her Cloyster easily, while Starmie will, and there's a lot of ways a fight with 3 bulky Pokemon could go, so in the end, this fight's likely going to go very slowly. I chose to start with Starmie against her Dugong, and while a single Thunderbolt doesn't take it down, I'm happy it didn't go in range to get Lorelei to use one of her full restores. Dugong does go down the next turn, and while we have some hail to deal with, her team doesn't have any abilities to capitalize on it. But to my surprise, Lapras comes out next. I'm certain Starmie could take at least one Body Slam from it, but I do not want it to get paralyzed, so I sent out Snorlax. It's able to take its attacks totally fine, and Brick Break does a lot, but the Citrus Berry messes with the possibility of 2-hit KOing it, and Snorlax gets immobilized by paralysis for 2 turns in a row before I decided to not risk it and full restore. I do get some Body Slams back on the Lapras, baiting out her full restore, but after that, Lapras gets paralyzed and eventually taken out. Cloyster was kind of awkward, as it has much better defense than special defense, and has got spikes in its moveset. Not risking anything, I chose to stay in to be ready for when Slowbro or Jinx come out, only for it to use Hail and Spikes. I was expecting Lorelei to use another full restore, but Cloyster tried to spam Protect, which ended about as well as you expect. Slowbro goes down as well, and Jinx uses Lovely Kiss first to put Snorlax to sleep, but noticing that Snorlax is male and Jinx is female, I switched into Ninetales expecting an Attract, and I was right on the money. After that, I was a smidge disappointed that Jinx took a Flamethrower, likely a moment of damage range, but the Flamethrower burned it. That's what happens when you don't have a burn heal. Up next is Bruno. Wonder if anyone talks about him. I really didn't want to make this a total Starmie sweep, but come on, you're just asking for your team to get messed up by one. Starmie even crits the Machamp just to really drive it home. I could have just had Agatha go down the same way, but her Golbat survived a Thunderbolt, and I chose to have Snorlax battle until the Arbok came out. Arbok then crits Starmie with Sludge Bomb, and thankfully, Starmie lives. But it was also a jump scare and a half, and the point where I just decided to win the battle ASAP. Thank Arceus her main Gengar did not outspeed, or I would have been in big trouble. I theoretically could have been a little more experimental, but given her first Gengar has 2 dangerous status ailments and double team, I'd rather not play with that much fire. Now we get to Lance, and with Ice Beam, Starmie's basically my best play against him. The things that really concerned me were if Ice Beam could one-shot either of the Dragonairs or even his Dragonite, or if Starmie could outspeed his Aerodactyl, since that thing naturally has a higher speed stat by default. His Gyarados immediately goes down to a crit Thunderbolt, and sadly, his first Dragonair hangs on by a sliver of health from an Ice Beam. Thankfully, Outrage doesn't do much. The second one immediately goes down from a crit, and here comes Dragonite. It also hangs on with a sliver of health, but to my bewilderment, he uses Safeguard. Bro, I nearly took you out, and that's what you're doing? Okay, bye. My other worry was put to rest because I don't know if I had the right amount of speed investment or if I was 2 levels higher, but Starmie outspeeds and takes care of his Aerodactyl. There were legit so many things that could have gone wrong in that battle, but man, I'm so proud of Starmie. That just leaves the final encounter with Larry, and while this isn't the most intimidating team for a champion, there are intimidating parts of it in this context. I'll need to play around with what I send out and when, if I want to get through this, let alone with as few casualties as possible. Larry's continuously been that one trainer in the entire Nuzlocke to give my Pokemon the most amount of problems, and he's continuously been getting stronger after every encounter, but so has my team, and after all that trouble, I think it's time we show him who's boss. Pidgeot really was not that big of an issue, as an Aerial Ace didn't do that much, and I'm glad he wasted one of his full restores on it. Gyarados? Bye. Now, Executor is where things get a little complicated, as Starmie probably won't be able to one-shot it with Ice Beam, and it has Sleep Powder, which I don't want to hit on most of my Pokemon, and Light Screen, which I absolutely do not want when Charizard comes out. So I send out Ninetales, and its first Sleep Powder misses, which is great! But it doesn't die to a single Flamethrower, and puts Ninetales to sleep anyway. Not great. Not seeing many other choices, I decide to use a full heal on Ninetales to wake it up, while Larry uses one of his full restores. But then Ninetales gets to show off its Fire Blast, which I thought I just said was on the League's doorstep. Venusaur was able to take out Rhydon with a single Razor Leaf, but not after she took a lot from Earthquake. Snorlax dealt with Alakazam, but did hit a lot with Psychics, and Charizard finally steps forth. Snorlax was able to take Fire Blast from it just fine, even with a lowered special defense, and with one of them being a critical hit, and while a full restored when it was in red health, it eventually got burned. Charizard had one Fire Blast left, so I chose to go into Ninetales to use Flash Fire against it. Again, history repeats itself. Ninetales took a beating from many aerial aces, but she noticed Charizard hit all of its Fire Blasts and decided to do the same, bringing the entire Nuzlocke to an end. Going into this challenge was always something I had a bit of skepticism on, as I really don't like feeling stressed out when playing an entire game. Certain challenges and bosses? Sure, but an entire game? Not really. But thankfully, with a bit of what I learned about Pokemon over the years, mixed with a few rules to alleviate some of the pressure, I legit had a great time with this. I did want to play this game eventually, given it was my entry point into the series, and it's now 20 years old, but I figured making it my first game to do a Nuzlocke with was really fitting. Heck, I even enjoy using Pokemon I almost never use, and gradually switching up teams to prepare for certain challenges. Sure, 11 important battles did dial down to using one Pokemon to trivialize everything, but I really wanted to keep losses to a minimum, and hey, it's Pokemon. We're always bound to find something to make challenges way easier. Besides, there were times where I was legit challenged, and sometimes where I kinda threw for content, or had some thoughts that were the equivalent of playing 40 chess, when I really should have just been playing checkers. But that's also part of the fun in my eyes. I could extend the journey to cover the entire Sivai Islands, and also the Elite Four and Champion rematches, but even though I enjoyed the experience, playing with Nuzlocke rules really wore me out, and I feel this finale is the perfect note to end on. I don't know if I'll ever do another Nuzlocke for this reason, but I have no regrets for finally trying it out after so long. I still hold the place in my heart for Leaf Green, and this was undoubtedly a worthwhile experience. Before I let you all go, I have something to say to the person who gave me this video idea in the first place, my brother, Paul. Buddy, if you're watching this, I am sorry that I did all this now, long after you suggested it, but I do hope this is what you wanted to see. This is my present to you, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. Have a very happy birthday. I am the Lightning Ripper, and I'll see you all next time.